Well, good afternoon again. It's still. I was just interrupted and lost 14 and a half minutes of a video I was creating, so that's what I'm laughing at. So it's still Thursday afternoon, it's still the 28th, and now instead of being about 3:30, it's about 3:50 p.m. I will be discussing, this is take two, I suppose. You have to laugh these things off. I mean, if you have any type of belief in yoga and the philosophy of yoga and the belief in the happenings of things and how fate works and how your life is supposed to go in a positive way, then you have to be able to laugh off things like doorbells ringing and you pushing the wrong button in response and losing the thread of your video, and you can't just go back and add on to it. You have to start over, and that's what I'm doing. This is chapter 10 of the Gita, and well, sorry about the giggling at the beginning, but I've got to laugh it off, and that's really the best way to deal with unexpected problems that aren't of major concern or have any incredible depth to them. It's just things happen, and there used to be an old expression about that. Things happened back in the 90s. In fact, they had a bumper sticker that was not quite as refined as how I just said it. So chapter 10 of the Gita is known as the chapter 10 of the Gita is known as the Vibhuti Yoga, the Yoga of Divine Glories. It's a radiant gem in the epic's philosophical crown. Vyasa's wisdom as interpreted by the classical commentator Sankara and myself as a modern scholar. I'm James Exum, by the way, also known as Sakshi, the Yogi Sakshi. We reveal new ways to approach the text. Sankara's sharp Advaitic lens and my contemporary comparative insights together illuminate the sacred conversations, enduring relevance for you, the seeker and the viewer of this video. Well, I'm getting back in my cadence now, it seems. The Gita's 10th chapter is framed as Krishna's self-revelation to Arjuna. Now, when I say self-revelation, he's opening, up to this point in the Gita, in the story, he's acting as the advisor to the young archer and the young prince, Arjuna, and he's answering his questions. But now the narrative shifts, so to speak, and instead of just answering questions, he's now starting to volunteer explanations and descriptive comments about his Krishna's makeup as a cosmic being. He's going to open up to Arjuna and explain himself fuller to the young man. And he starts by not speaking in riddles, but in declarations. In the past, he may have spoken in a riddle-like form, but not really. But to Arjuna, being young and naive, it was rather like riddles. He enumerates his splendor, his vibhutis, as he is manifested in the world, urging Arjuna to see the divine not as an abstract principle, but as the living reality behind the world's most striking phenomena. Vyasa, through Krishna's voice, establishes several essential themes. And here's the first one: the omnipresence of the divine, Krishna's assertion, "I am the self, O God Daksha, seated in the hearts of all beings." God Daksha is just one of his pet names, or one of his several names he gives to Arjuna. He gives him several names. Seated in the hearts of all beings, and that underscores the immanence of his divinity. This is a God incarnate on earth, acting as a driver of a chariot right before a great battle on the battlefield, before the participants, with a young prince of the royal family, who is an archer who's despondent and having second thoughts about wanting to participate in the battle. So to move onward in the description we're talking about, or Vyasa is talking about, the next one, that's the omnipresence of the divine. The next one could be listed as unity and diversity. The enumeration of Krishna's manifestations among the adityaras, there it is, adityaras, A-D-I-T-Y-A-S. It's a very difficult Sanskrit word, and Sanskrit's not my first language, so forgive me when I mispronounce. He is Vishnu, and amongst the lights, he is the sun. Among the rivers, he is the Ganga, which is the Indian pronunciation of Ganges, and so on. He demonstrates this unity underlying the world's diversity. The guidance from Krishna affirms that wisdom, intelligence, forgiveness, and other virtues are his own vibhutis. Thus, the pursuit of such qualities is itself a spiritual path. So he's saying, I'm all these things, and you too can pick up some of these attributes, some of these qualities. Vaishna's death narrative serves both the devotee and the philosopher, weaving together the strands of bhakti, devotion, jnana, knowledge. The 10th chapter, more than any other, asks, and here's the great question of this chapter. The 10th chapter asks, how does one see the world as truly sacred? Well, it was made by God. It's made of his components. And if God is sacred, that makes the world sacred. That's my interpretation, my modern day narrative, my modern day commentary to answer that particular question at hand. Adi Shankara, the 8th century sage, is perhaps the most influential commentator on the Bhagavad Gita. His Bhashya commentary on chapter 10 offers an uncompromising Advaitic reading. All the listed Vibhutis are in essence manifestations of the one non-dual Brahman. Well, I just said that in plainer modern English. In essence, manifestation, all the listed Vibhutis, characteristics, are in essence manifestations of the one non-dual Brahman. For Sankara, the apparent multiplicity in Krishna's self-description is a device meant to lead the aspirant from the seeker from outward diversity to inward unity. Well, let's hope it does that for you. You might want to reread or rewind and listen to what I'm saying here a couple of times to gather the true essence of what's been said. And now we're going to move down to some of the points concerning this. The first point would be doctrine of non-duality. Sankara insists that the divine is not limited to select manifestations such as the sun or the Ganga or Ganges, but is equally present in all things. Well, I back that up 100%. The enumeration serves to draw the mind into contemplation. Well, if you're listening to this, your mind may have already been drawn into contemplation of the depth of the philosophical discussion that is being presented to you this afternoon, or whenever you're listening to it. This is deep, deep yoga philosophy. We're not wading into the ankle-deep waters of the sacred river. We're mid-waist, and we're moving out into the current of the great river of knowledge. We're not children waiting on the edge any longer. Now we're engaging fully with the depth and breadth of the great philosophy of yoga. Devotion is knowledge. Means to knowledge. Sankara interprets Krishna's advice with a single fragment of myself I pervade and support this entire universe as an invitation to contemplate the imperishable self behind all perishable forms. Well, again, you might want to rewind and listen to those words. Devotion is knowledge. For Sankara, devotion arises naturally from the recognition of unity. Well, it does for me also, but we're talking about Sankara, so I won't jump in there. Bhakti is not opposed to jnana, but flows from it. Devotion is not opposed to knowledge, but flows from knowledge, is basically what that says. A realization that the personal and impersonal aspects of the divine are inseparable. The personal and impersonal aspects of the divine are inseparable. Well, of course they are. He is only one. Your personal and impersonal characteristics are inseparable. They're still characteristics of you. They're still explanations of you. They're still you. I don't, sometimes human beings cannot come up with the words to explain universal concepts. We have this veil between us and that understanding sometimes. We also have veils between, we also have veils that mask our tongue so that we're incapable of projecting such important speech from ourselves to the ears of others. Yes, that's right. Thus, chapter 10 becomes in Sankara's hand not merely a hymn of divine glory, but a ladder by which the seeker ascends from the multiplicity to the oneness of Brahman. You go from all the billions of things that can be seen in the cosmos, and your mind reinterprets all of those not as billions of individual things, entities, creations, but with the right mindset and the right understanding of yoga, you can reinterpret that and compress it down into one thing. When you look at the stars, when you look at the moon, when you look at the oceans, when you look at the millions of people on the planet, you're merely looking at manifestations of God Himself. There is no separation. We all are part of the Creator. And the way I can say that without any doubt in my mind is simply this: nothing comes from nothing. Something comes from something. There had to be something from which everything that exists was projected, was born, was created. And God is that something. Okay, my modern interpretation of this comparative perspective goes sort of like this. I approach chapter 10 with and I'm reading my own writing here, by the way. I approach chapter 10 with a comparative interreligious framework where Sankara gazes at it in an introspective manner. Mine is expansive as I draw parallels between Krishna's enumerations and similar lists of sacred manifestations across world traditions. I do comparative religious studies. I compare different religions and their philosophies and their histories and their verses and their writings, and then from my comparisons I try to gather the common truth amongst all of those, and then I utilize those to help support my personal philosophy that has gone into my true understanding of the tenets of yoga. The universal sacredness, and these are my bullet points. I note that Vibhuti lists functions as a catalog of spaces of encounter with the mystical. Spaces of encounter with the mystical. Again, rewind and understand. Just as Krishna claims his presence in the sun and the Ganges, other traditions identify particular forms as doors to the divine. Consider the burning bush in Exodus or the Bodhi tree in Buddhism. Okay, now I'm going to shift to another bullet point, psychological resonance. My analysis highlights how the divine's present in supreme qualities, which include wisdom, patience, speech, should remind the seeker that spirituality is not only about external objects, but also about the cultivation of internal virtues. Well, of course, if you're going to make progress in your beliefs, yoga is not a religion; it's a science. So I look at my intensity in getting involved with yoga not as faith. I look at it as a stronger belief in the framework of what I'm studying. So the seeker, that the spirituality is not only about the external objects, but also about the cultivation of the inner virtues. Well, you can be a virtuous scientist. Oppenheimer, in the long run, proved to be virtuous, even though they did what they did to him and soiled his name all those years. He was still virtuous. I'm talking about Robert Oppenheimer, who was a follower of the Gita, of the Bhagavad Gita, and the philosophy of yoga. The Gita's teachings here are not merely cosmic, but personal. So you can be cosmic and personal at the same time. God is cosmic and personal. You and I can be philosophically simple when we're talking to a child. Goo goo gaga, does baby want a piece of cake? That's very simple philosophy. Looking after its needs. Or then we can go into philosophical discourses like I'm presenting to you now. We can be simple and complex. We can be plain and cosmic at the same time. Okay, now I'm going to move on to comparative theology. My juxtaposing of Krishna's self-revelation with the analogous concepts in Christianity, Islam, and other faiths. I argue for the Gita's universality. I argue for two things when I give these several things, but two things I repeatedly argue for is the universality of the Gita's wisdom and teachings. The second one is the universality of anyone that's welcome to come into yoga and seek Brahman as the God mentioned in yoga. Yes. And you go, well, you just said a while ago it's not a religion. Well, it's not a religion. But there can be gods in texts, in books, especially books on wisdom, especially books on ethics and morals. But you don't have to follow him as a god. You can just follow him as a guru, which simply means a great teacher. Or you can even go much further philosophically and follow him as your creator. So you're not being religious, you're being thankful. This entity, this great creator, created little old humble me. I don't have to worship him, I just have to respect him as my creator and follow the rules and regulations, so to speak, that he projects into the world, which is goodness and honesty and fairness and caring and such and so forth. Comparative theology, I just spoke of that. The divinity's glory is not confined to a single tradition or geography, but invites all seekers into its embrace. Well, that's what I just said. I'm universal even in that. My work bridges east and west, I'm talking personally now, ancient and modern, showing that the search for meaning in the world's beauty and power is a perennial human quest. There are convergences and divergences in yoga. The tapestry of interpretations, Vyasa's original vision, I said in yoga, but more especially in the Gita, Sankara's philosophical rigor and my comparative encompassment yields both convergences and divergences. The convergences, an example, are all three perspectives affirm the sanctity of the world and the possibility of encountering the divine in daily life. Well, I encounter the divine every day in my life because I see God everywhere. And you go, well, you're mad. You're off your gourd. You're not playing with a full deck. Well, I'm not accusing you of anything. So what gives you the right of accusing me of being so deep into my personal philosophy, I can believe that God is everywhere because we're part of the universe, and the universe is the manifestation of God. So of course he's everywhere. So now who's mad? I'm not being mean or rude, but old yogis have to defend themselves because there are a lot of people out there trying to pull pot shots at us here and there. I haven't encountered any lately, but in my younger days they were out there. Okay. So divergences. Sankara's Advaita seeks ultimate abstraction, leading the seeker away from forms towards pure experience. I conversely revel in the forms themselves, locating the sacred in multiplicity. I've just said that, I'm being redundant now. Vyasa, the composer, masterfully keeps both in play, inviting both transcendence and immanency. Immanency. Conclusion. Well, thank goodness. I'm getting a little wild here, a little revved up. And I'm not doing it because I can't control myself. I'm doing it because, well, when you're an old yogi and you grew up in the 70s and 60s, there were a lot of older people running around that were, you think there's conservatives out there now, those boys were amateurs compared to what was back then. Oh, Lord have mercy. Ultimately, Chapter 10 of the Gita reminds us that the wisdom is not a static possession. How can wisdom be static? It's always growing, it's always moving, it's always exploring, it's always encompassing. It's a dynamic process, a way of seeing the panoramic world with meaning, possibilities, and, of course, the sacredness of the world. To meditate on Krishna's words is to embark on a journey from the outer world to the inner self, to the unknown, from the known to the unknown, guided by the light of Vyasa, Sankara, and all who seek. But I'm going to end it there, and I think I've kind of wrapped it all together for you. I'm sorry I'm a little emotional, but again, I lost a good 15-minute video because of a doorbell ring. Well, it wasn't a doorbell's fault. It was my own incompetence and being new to the technology of my Android phone and making videos. Remember, I've been at this less than 6 weeks, and yet I've already made 30 videos. This should be number 31. There seems to be some sort of discretion within YouTube in my studio of how many I've made. Sometimes it says I've made 32. This morning it said I made 30. And it also said I made 32, depending on which portion of the studio I visited to look at the analysis. But it doesn't matter. I believe this is number 31. That's the number that seems to come up the most, was 30. So I'll go with that. It doesn't matter. But I am shooting for 50 before my 75th birthday. And I've said this before. That's my goal, just create 50 informative videos for you, my viewers, before my 75th, which is coming up pretty darn soon. We have about 12 and 30, about 42 days, and I'll be there. 3/4 of a century, folks. 3/4 of a century. And you can say, well, you know, he looks like he's 3/4 of a century older than me. What's he bragging about? Well, I'm not bragging, but, you know, considering all of my chronic conditions I have, which is Parkinson's, high blood pressure, heart problems, on and on and on, diabetes, I look pretty good for an old man, I think. And that's not being vain, that's just fact. If you don't believe me, ask all these ladies that live here in the complex with me. I live in a complex of 55 years and older, and I've lived here almost 10 years. I've got a lot of friends here, good, solid friends. So to mediate on Krishna's words is to embark on a journey from the outer world to the inner self. And that's what this is what I'm trying to teach you. Don't put too much stock in the outer world. Start in exploring your inner world. That's where truth is. That's where your soul is. That's where true knowledge is. That's where comfort is. That's where eternity lies. Because your soul is eternal. Start paying more attention to the caring about your soul than they care about your bank account, folks. The bank account's necessary, but the soul is eternal. Money is transient. And so I'm going to end it here, and I'm going to end it with these simple words. I always try to end it with this. Be good to yourself. Be kind to your friends, your family, and even strangers. And do this because I want you to pass this idea on, this concept on of being friendly and civil to each other, because who knows, in about 10 years or 15 or 20 years from now, if we do follow this example and we do practice this concept, we may wake up in the world one day and look around and say, gosh, look how wonderful the world is. This is how it should have been all along. Now, if you enjoyed visiting with me, thank you. I truly, truly thank you. You will learn my ways, and I'm not perfect by any means. But then again, I'm a yogi. I'm not a priest. I'm not a bishop. I'm not that type of man of God. I'm a different type of man of God. So you'll get used to me if you watch my videos. If you enjoyed them, thank you. If you did not, that's okay too. But if you did enjoy them, come back and see me. And I look forward to writing another one of these discourses, another one of these explanations of the different chapters of the Gita for you. There's 18 chapters. That was chapter 10, and I have now I have 8 to go. Goodbye, and thank you.